I know French grammar can be quite confusing sometimes, so in this video, I'm going to show you how to pronounce and how to use all these little words you see in front of nouns, such as du, de la, de l'apostrophe, de, des. So that way, you won't have to try to guess every single time which one to use. Okay, so let's see how it works. First, let's start with du, de la, de l'apostrophe, because they all refer to the same thing. It's just that here they are used in different forms. So you have a masculine form, a feminine form, and a contracted form that is used in front of words starting with a vowel sound. So they can be used in three different ways, meaning that they have three different meanings according to the context. Let's see the first context. The first context has to do with uncountable words. So, what does that mean? This means that you're going to have a word that cannot be counted and doesn't have a plural form, and it doesn't have any article in English. So, let me show you a few examples. For example, in English, when you say, I like to eat chicken, you don't say, I like to eat chickens, right? So you use chicken without a plural form, and you don't use any article in front of chicken. Okay, so I like to eat chicken. I don't know how much chicken you like to eat. Here, the information is just that you like to eat chicken in general, right? So, in that way, you cannot count the chicken there, right? It's an uncountable word in that context. So, anytime you have this type of word in English with no article and no plural form, that's when we use du, de la, or de l'apostrophe. So, du, de la, de l'apostrophe, here it could be some. It could mean some. The thing is, you don't use any article in English, but you could say, I like to eat some chicken. So whenever you can say some in the sentence, that means you have to use du, de la, or de l'apostrophe. In this sentence, we are using a masculine word, which is chicken, poulet in French. So I would say, j'aime manger du poulet. Okay, which can literally mean I like to eat some chicken, but it's more natural in English to say I like to eat chicken. Okay, so let's see now an example, but with the feminine form, right? So let's say I say in English, I like to drink beer. So I don't say I like to drink beers. Here, there's no plural form. I don't use any article in front of that word in English. The quantity is not there, right? So it's an uncountable word. In that case, I'm going to use de la because beer is also feminine, right? In French. So I'm going to say, j'aime boire de la bière, which literally means I like to drink some beer, or more naturally, I like to drink beer. Okay? Another example, this time with the contracted form, is in English, I like to drink water, for example. Okay, water is not countable. There's no plural form. Here, there's no article in front of it. That means I can use or a contracted form because we say O, by the way. So O is a vowel sound. That's when I'm going to use the contracted form. So I'm going to say here, j'aime boire de l'eau. So we don't say j'aime boire eau. We need something in front of the noun. Okay? So here, literally, it's I like to drink some water, but in English, you usually say I like to drink water. I wanted to add here that a word doesn't necessarily have to be uncountable. So, for example, if I say now, je veux boire de la bière, it means I want to drink beer, or literally, I want to drink some beer. Okay. In that case, beer is uncountable, right? Because it doesn't have a plural form in English and doesn't use any article in English in front of it, right? So, but now let's say I say, I want to drink a beer. Here, I'm actually referring to a glass of beer. Okay. So it's one beer. And I could say in French, je veux boire une bière. So here I'm using une because bière is feminine, right? Je veux boire une bière. And now let's say that I want to have several glasses of beer. Then I could say, I want to drink beers. If you have a plural form in English with an S at the end, with no article in front of it, it means that in French we have to use des, right? So anytime you see des in French, it's pronounced des, okay? So I want to drink beers become je veux boire des bières. Now, if I want to say something like, I want to drink a lot of beer, in that case, I'm not going to use du, de la, or de l'apostrophe. Well, in that case, de la because it's feminine, but I'm going to use de, okay? Because it literally means of. So here I'm going to say in French, je veux boire beaucoup de bière. Okay, so we don't say je veux boire beaucoup de la bière. Okay, so always keep de. Okay, it doesn't matter if the word is feminine, masculine, um, yeah, it doesn't matter. So it's always going to be de, unless you have a word starting with a vowel sound. In that case, you can use the contracted form. For example, je veux boire beaucoup d'eau. Okay, but otherwise, you're not going to say here, je veux boire beaucoup de l'eau. Okay, so that's how you use a de for quantities here. So you have beaucoup de, a lot of. You could also say, je veux boire un peu d'eau. I want to drink a little bit of water. So here I gave you a lot of examples with food and drinks, but it doesn't have to be the case. For example, you could use it with things that have nothing to do with food and drinks. Let's say I say here, I have money. Money is not something you can count, right? You don't say one money. Here, there's no plural form, right? You don't say monies, and there's no article used in English, which means that you can use du, de la, or de l'apostrophe here. Money is argent in French. It starts with a vowel sound, which means I have to use the contracted form, which is de l'apostrophe. So here I'm going to say, I have money, j'ai de l'argent. Okay, so it doesn't have to be food and drinks all the time, right? Another example is with activities, and this is a very common thing that we use. For example, faire plus a fun activity. For example, je fais du tennis, which means I'm doing tennis as a hobby, for example, right? So we say, je fais du yoga, I do yoga, or I'm doing yoga. Je fais du yoga, je fais du tennis, je fais du basket. Okay, so we use it a lot with activities, but only fun ones, because anything that is not fun, for example, here I'm referring to activities like chores you do at the house. In this case, we don't use du, de la, or de l'apostrophe. We just use le, la, l'apostrophe, au les. For example, if you say, I'm doing groceries, here I'm going to say, je fais les courses. Or if you say, for example, I'm cleaning the house, then I would say, je fais le ménage. Okay, so just think of like fun activities that you do. We usually use faire plus du, de la, de l'apostrophe. But if it's something boring like chores, we usually use le, la, l'apostrophe, les. Let's see now how to use the second meaning of du, de la, de l'apostrophe. So it could also mean from the plus a place, or from the plus a time during the day, like morning, afternoon, evening, or night. Let's see a few examples. Let's say you want to say something like, I am coming back from the office. In French, I would say, je reviens du bureau. Bureau is masculine, so I'm using du. Let's say now that I'm using a feminine word, a feminine place. In English, if I say, I leave the house, well, literally in French, we say, I leave from the house. In French, I would say, je pars de la maison. Okay? Then let's say I want to use a word starting with a vowel sound. In that case, I can say in English, I'm coming out of the hospital. In French, we literally say, I'm coming out from the hospital. So then I would say in French, je sors de l'hôpital. Okay, so this is for regular places you're going out of or places you're coming from. Okay, so now let's say that you want to say something like, I'm working from morning to evening. In French, I would say, je travaille du matin au soir. So, du matin, we say from the morning. I work from the morning to the evening. Okay? And now let's say that you want to talk about time, so specific time. In that case, be careful. We're not going to use du, we're going to use de. For example, I'm going to say in English, je travaille, in English, I work from 8 in the morning to 6 in the night or in the evening. In French, I'm going to say, je travaille de 8 heures du matin jusqu'à 18 heures or 6 heures du soir. So if you're talking about a specific time or from a specific time, you're going to use de and not du. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about something a little bit tricky. So it's about countries, regions, or cities. So the rules here can be a little bit different. So when it comes to countries or regions, so anytime you're going to say that you're coming from a country and the country is considered as masculine, then you're going to use du. For example, any country or any region that is not ending with the letter E at the end is considered as masculine most of the time. For example, let's say I want to say in English, I'm coming from Canada. In French, I'm going to say je viens du Canada. Okay? Canada ends in the letter A. It doesn't end with the letter E. Okay? So it's not considered as a feminine country. You have a few exceptions, but not many. But in general, that's how it works. Now, let's say that you have a country ending with the letter E. In that case, you're not going to say je viens de la France, for example. I come from France. So France ends with the letter E. It's considered as a feminine country, but it's not a regular place. It's a country, so it has a different rule, meaning that instead of saying je viens de la France, you're going to say je viens de France. Okay, be careful with that. Now, let's say that you have a country starting with the vowel sound like India, and in that case, you're going to use the apostrophe there. So you're not going to say je viens de l'Inde. You're going to say je viens d'Inde. Okay, je viens d'Inde. So be careful with this little rule here. That's for countries. It works for region also. So, for example, let's say I want to say I come from Mississippi. It ends in E, okay, E sound. So in French, I'm going to say je viens du je viens du Mississippi. So hard to pronounce. Du Mississippi. Okay? Now, sometimes a few countries can have a plural form. So what do you use in this case? Well, in this case, you're going to use de. So, for example, if you want to say, I come from the United States, so United States, it's plural, right? So I'm going to say in French, je viens des États-Unis. And here I need to connect here. Des États-Unis. Je viens des États-Unis. Okay. Now, the last thing I wanted to show you, it's about cities. So for any city, it doesn't matter if it's, there's no masculine, feminine for cities. Okay, so you're always going to use de. So if I want to say I come from Paris, I'm going to say in French, je viens de Paris. So I'm not going to say je viens du Paris. Okay, so that's for cities. And for example, if you have a city starting with the letter or a vowel sound, then you're going to use the apostrophe. Je viens d'Amsterdam, for example. I come from Amsterdam. Okay. Finally, du, de l'apostrophe can refer to of the. Okay. So we express ourselves a little bit differently in French compared to English in that context. So, for example, if you want to say in English, this is the man's or the gentleman's bag. So in French, I would say literally, this is the bag of the gentleman. So I would say, c'est le sac du monsieur. If we're talking about a feminine word, so then I would say, for example, this is the lady's bag. I would say literally, this is the bag of the lady. So I would say, c'est le sac de la dame. Okay. Then, to give you an example with the contracted form, if I say in English, this is the man's bag, or literally in French, this is the man, no, this is the bag of the man, then in French, I would say, c'est le sac de l'homme. So remember that in that case, it translates by of the, right? Now, let's say I want to say, this is Mary's bag, right? In that case, if I translate literally, I wouldn't say, this is the bag of the Mary, right? So I cannot say, c'est le sac du mari. I would say, c'est le sac de Marie. This is the bag of Mary, literally. Okay? Same thing if you have a plural form. For example, this is the bag of the men, or this is the men's bag, meaning that is one bag, but it belongs to several men. Okay? So in French, I would say, c'est le sac des hommes. This is the men's bag. Okay? So it doesn't have to necessarily be used in a context to express someone's possession. So it can also be used in, for example, in a sentence where you express something that has nothing to do with people. For example, let's say I want to say something like, the price of the plane ticket is expensive. So in French, I would say, le prix du billet d'avion est cher. So see that here I use du to say of the, right? But here I say billet d'avion, ticket of plane, right? So here, because I'm not talking about a specific plane, I'm not saying billet de l'avion with the contracted form, right? So I'm saying billet d'avion, okay? Because I'm talking about plane in general, okay? I hope it makes sense.